Hello, here is my nature sounds presentation. What I decided to focus on for a story was my walk in Duncan's Cove, Nova Scotia. This photo here is a view from the ocean, which is the main attraction for the Duncan's Cove walk. But what I decided to focus on was not the ocean aspect of this walk. There was a little walk up part that was honestly kind of my favorite because it was a swampy area and you were walking over sphagnum moss and there was a lot of cool plant life that I saw there. The audio I showed was swamp audio. So as you can hear in it, there's a lot of life. There's birds, which kind of remind me of the forest at the background of this picture that I took on the swamp walk, and you can also see the water in this. You can hear it in the audio, and you can also see it in the photo. But something else that's noticeable, and I'm going to play again so you can listen to it, is the mosquito noise. So I'm going to play the swamp audio again now. And so I was interested because I didn't see any mosquitoes while I was doing the swamp walk. So I was interested in how the nutrient levels in the swamp affected the distribution and abundance of mosquitoes. So the specific nutrient that I focused on was nitrogen levels. And as you may know, nitrogen is very high in fertilizer, which often causes algal blooms and stuff of that nature. So fertilizer is obviously found in farms. And so there's this map here shows that the farms in Nova Scotia, so the red dots, and the green areas are agricultural areas. So these areas would have a higher nitrogen level because they're farms, which have fertilizer, which have high nitrogen levels. But as you see in the red circle, that right there is Duncan's Cove. And so as you can see, it's very far from any agricultural areas, which means that it would not have artificially elevated levels of nitrogen. So how do nitrogen levels affect mosquitoes? They did an experiment on mosquito larvae and nitrogen levels. They have two life stages. One is the larval stage in which they're in water. So that's good advice for you. Don't leave standing water outside your house because, especially in the summertime, mosquitoes will come, lay their eggs, and they'll hatch, and you'll have more mosquitoes. It's bad. But that would make sense for swamps where they have a lot of standing water, which is why you hear it in the audio, and which is why people associate swamps with mosquitoes, is because it's a great spawning ground for them with all the standing water. But people did an experiment where they looked into how nitrogen levels can affect mosquitoes, and so they artificially elevated nitrogen levels to see how it affected mosquito nymphs or larvae. And this graph just depicts it where the dotted line is the artificially enriched nitrogen level areas, and the straight line, or the not dotted line, is unenriched areas. So if we're looking back at our example, the enriched area would be farmland, or areas with high nitrogen level like farmland, and unenriched would be natural, not natural, but areas without high nitrogen like Duncan's Cove, which is far from any farms. So as you can see, the enriched level, the dotted line, is consistently higher than the unenriched, which indicates that areas with high nitrogen levels, areas with high nitrogen levels like farmland would have more mosquitoes. Areas like Duncan's Cove would not have a lot of mosquitoes due to the low nitrogen levels. And so this is talking about the distribution and abundance of mosquitoes due to nutrients in the environment of swamp. But if we continue to focus on nutrients and in the environment of the swamp, but look at adaptation and ecology, we actually get to my favorite part of the walk, which was when I saw a pitcher plant. Actually, I saw a bunch of them, but this was my favorite photo that I took. Pitcher plants are really cool because they're a carnivorous plant. They're one of the only ones in Nova Scotia. I believe they're the only one. And they have an adaptation to grow in low nitrogen environments where they will trap bugs and secrete digestive enzymes, which breaks them down. So I saw this pitcher plant and recognized it right away. You can see it's got the modified leaf here, where the left side has formed into this pitcher. And so bugs will go into that pitcher and get digested, and their nitrogen will be used in the plant. And so that's an adaptation that the pitcher plant has to deal with low nitrogen environments. And another adaptation that it has is you can see these white hairs that face downwards on the lip here. Those are actually used to keep the bug trapped. So the bug tries to kind of crawl up, and then it can't get out because it's trapped by these hairs, and then is eventually secreted and digested for its nitrogen, which is very cool. And I'm glad I got to see one of these on my walk. So there is a very useful indigenous perspective for Duncan's Cove that we could take in relation to my walk. But first, I think we should look at the settlers' perspective. When settlers came to the New World, they were thinking, they had many thinkers like Locke, who believed that any land that was not put towards human use was wasted. So when they came and saw the natives, they saw that they weren't putting the land towards strictly agricultural and were not kind of using the land for all it's worth, as you can imagine, worth in the human sense and how that can help humans. And so if you look at this map again and focus on the white areas, if you're a settler, you would say, oh, that's wasted area. We could be farming that land and instead be making much more money, much more crops, maybe turn Nova Scotia into like an economic superpower or something. I don't know. But obviously, indigenous people don't see it that way. When the people came to the New World, the indigenous people told them to practice restraint with their agricultural practices. But obviously they didn't listen. You see the situation we're in now. But yeah, I think remembering this indigenous practice of restraint and respect for the land, even if it's not being put towards use in the human sense, it is still important to preserve this. When I reached the end of the walk, I felt a lot better. I had a great walk outdoors, and it was a stressful time. I had a lot of tests, but I decided to go on the walk, and it worked, which makes sense. It's scientifically backed. If you spend more than 20 minutes outside, it can lower cortisol levels, which cortisol is the stress hormone, or hormone related to stress. And so I think this is cool because it relates back to the indigenous perspective and kind of bridges the gap between that and the settler perspective, where these areas are actually very important for humans in the sense that it helps us to be more at peace. Having a designated place where we can go in nature helps humans, maybe not in the direct sense of food, but more in the mental health sense, which I think is very cool. And yeah, I'm very glad that there's no farmland near here, which would increase the nitrogen content and change this landscape to make it less fun to be in and have a bunch of mosquitoes. Here are the sources that I used, and here is the audio sourcing. It was a source from freesoundeffects.com, and it's called Swamp.